Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. I am Race for the Prize. Let's look at the Phoenix Cup salaries and identify value. But first, remember, racefortheprize.com. That's where you can get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, the projections, the pools, the tools, the lap-by-lap data, which is going to be very important. And I should discuss that right here before we go into specific drivers and specific salaries. Let me also mention, I've got a sore throat and I'm going to struggle through this, but it's the beginning of the month and I got to pump out podcasts to drive SEO, to sell spreadsheets. So please bear with me. This will not be my finest hour, but we will get through this together. And hopefully I will provide some information that helps you for your Phoenix lineups. Before we dive into the drivers and what makes them special, and we're not just talking about cheap drivers. Often when we think of salary reviews and price checks, we're just looking for the cheap guys because it's easier for them to return value because they simply don't have to score a lot of points. But we're also looking at a guy like Kyle Larson at 11,500 and discussing if he can be a good point per dollar play. And when he can score 74 hog points or dominator points, then yes, of course, he can be a good point per dollar play. And he needs to be a part of the conversation and discussion, and we will get to that. But first, the big note, and I have mentioned this on the podcast before, we know that there was tests in Phoenix, and if you listen to the podcast, the specifics of them. So for the people who've listened before, I apologize for the redundancy. We got a lot of new people, and maybe you have forgotten, and maybe you don't follow me on Twitter. We have a new tire along with the package. Goodyear believes that the tire will degrade, and there is strong fall off with this tire, which should provide exciting racing. And it's going to create a difference between short run speed, long run speed, drivers that can balance both, drivers that can manage tires, drivers that choose to manage tires during different sequences of the race. And we could see a significant amount of lead changes. And we may not. We may be overhyping this, but I think the truth is probably somewhere in between. And if I had to take a stand this early in the week, I believe there will be fall off. How significant will it be? I'm not sure. To what degree will it be? I'm not sure. But I am willing to buy into long run speed mattering. And if long run speed matters, I want to see what the drivers are going to do on long runs in practice. And thus, with the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, I will be not necessarily eloping or running off and getting married to practice data, but I am going to weigh heavily and strongly long run speeds. I'm going to look at laps 20, 21, 22, 23, each individual lap in the 30s and 40s, because this will be an extended practice because it's new package. We're going to get a lot of lap data, and we're going to see who's doing what. And we're going to get a pretty clear picture of long run speed, and that long run speed should translate in the race. That's where I stand on that. I reserve the right to change my mind, but that's my first point. The second point about the new tire that Goodyear is using, which I believe is a wider tire, it is going to change the setup. Setups that were successful in the past may not be successful this weekend. Phoenix is a very unique track to begin with a flat bank turn and a moderately banked turn, and then with the dog leg and scraping the apron. The car is going to load and unload differently. The springs are going to need to be set up differently. The ride height will be different. The splitter height will have to be adjusted. The diffuser will have to be lowered or raised with Tim's on, tire pressure that they're going to play around with. We saw teams playing around with tire pressure last week. Do they dare play around with tire pressure again this week, like Christopher Bell's team did? Can you do that and get away with it by lowering that diffuser too much and scraping the bejesus out of it on the apron by going onto the dog leg, undercutting it? I say all that to make one point as I swish around this cough drop. Teams in the past that have had success at Phoenix may struggle in practice. And you may dismiss those struggles and say, they'll figure it out. They're always good at Phoenix. Oh, they're just doing shakedown laps. For me, if they are struggling in Phoenix, it is a clear indication that this tire is throwing them for loops. This package is throwing them for loops. And if you don't show me speed in practice, in an extended practice, at a track, which we're going to come back to for the championship, I'm believing it. And if someone surprises me with speed, I'm not going to dismiss that either. I'm going to go with the assumption that they guessed right. They prepared right. Maybe they had some notes from the test that helped them out, but they understand this tire. They understand how to find speed. And, at other races and other moments, we have seen guys out of nowhere look fast in practice, and we think it's a bit of a mirage. I don't think that's a mirage this weekend, and vice versa. So, yes, it does seem like I'm running off with the practice data, and I am turning my back on process, track history, current form. Truth is, we don't really have any current form because of the new package, and the track history remains in question because of the new package. So while it may seem like that meme where the guy is with the girlfriend and then he's looking the other way at the girl that walks by, which would be the practice data, that's kind of what we're doing. But yeah, just gotta accept it. All right. So usually when we do the price check and we're looking at the values of the drivers, we start at the bottom. So why change that up any? Let's get into the guys, look at the prices, and see if they're available. I almost want to completely scratch off Casgralla and Derek Kraus, but I won't. I don't have very many good things to say about these drivers. Casgralla does not have much speed, and his pit crew stinks, and it's a Rick Ware car, and 5,000 may actually be more than I need, more than he's worth. That being said, if I build a lineup I really like and I have only $5,000 and Casgralla is starting in the back, all of those need to be requirements. Those are prerequisites, meaning he's starting in the back, very back. I only have $5,000 and I love the rest of my lineup. I will build a lineup with him. He could score points. And we can look at last week. Last week wasn't awful. Just simply through attrition, Casgralla scored 11 points. Not very exciting, right? Started 32nd, finished 31st. If I got a little bit more, I would much rather go up to the Call-It car. Derek Kraus, not a huge believer, Derek Kraus. But he did score 19.95 points last week by driving from 33rd to 28th. And that really simply was a matter of attrition and having a better car than a couple of the drivers. You got a better car than Casgralla. You got a better car than JJ Yaley. He can make this thing work. Again, it's just a straight punt. I don't love it. You can go up to Haley too, as long as he doesn't qualify too close. Same scenario for everybody else. If this is only the money you have, starting in the back, I will go there. Other than that, I am not bullish on Rick Ware cars. I don't mind Call-It cars, but I just am not enthralled with rostering Derek Kraus. Harrison Burton falls into that same category, which is a shame. He's got Jeremy Bullins as crew chief. The Wood brothers at 5,400 is just way too cheap. But we've got a large enough sample size now that Harrison Burton, this team it's not working. He could turn it around. He could have a good race. The only way I'm going to consider him, he's got to have an excellent practice, and he's got to be starting close to the back. Things can change, obviously, as we see practice and qualifying unfold. But right now, as I record this, based on what we have seen, I don't love these drivers They're just guys that could work based on DFS action. I don't think any of them have speed. I don't love their cars. They're just, here's what I got to do. It's a punt. These guys could qualify as punts as well, but I like the drivers and I like the cars. I like Daniel Hemrick in a Cullig car for $5,600. Cullig is a decent team. Hemrick, as I said last week, would put together a good race, and he did put together a good race. He got top 20 at Phoenix back in 2022 running for Cullig. He has been a top 20 finisher in all 3 races this season. It may not be pretty, but he can get there. I believe this car is still undervalued. Went with it last week. Very much willing to roll the dice again. James Smith, Spire Motorsports. They have speed. They had a mechanical issue last week. Hurt a lot of people. Maybe that lowers ownership. I don't believe enough people played him for that to matter. I believe in Spire. Very strong last week. Todd Gilliland may lack the upside of these 2 drivers, but a slightly higher price. He'll be a little bit lower owned. And all he did last year was just pop off top 25 after top 25. So if a top 25 can work in fantasy terms, then you're going to want to consider him in your pool. This is an absolute struggle. Hopefully someone out there understands, like, all right, I'm going to buy the spreadsheet. This guy suffered through this for me. I'll sign up for the month of March. I'll hit him up on PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. Carson Hocevar, I love it. $6,000. Am I rushing in? Am I in too soon? Don't care. He has shown me enough. And this is not a traditional rookie. He closed out last season subbing. And when he closed out last season subbing, he was working with crew chief Luke Lambert. He is again this year working with Luke Lambert. Lambert left Legacy, came to Spire to work with Hocevar. And they look good at Las Vegas. I liked what they did. He had some strong restarts. I'm on board. He was good at Phoenix last year. The only way this goes wrong is if he qualifies too close to the front, which absolutely could happen. But where I stand, for the record, I'm a believer in Hocevar. Like him, love him. He does fall into that Chastain category. He is a personality that definitely can irritate and divide people. A young Rowdy Bush. Austin Cindric, the struggle continues. Whenever we see young drivers not find success and then get crew chief after crew chief, and most of them are pretty good, it usually tells us it's just not going to work. Corey LaJoie at 6,300. I like this as well. My only concern is that he has never really been good at Phoenix. His finishes aren't good, and his driver rating isn't very good either. He's not someone that I'm really excited about. Stenhouse is a little bit better. Stenhouse was halfway decent at Las Vegas last week. Much of this will be predicting ownership. Much of this will be, can he score enough fantasy points? He was in an optimal lineup at Phoenix a couple seasons ago right there last spring, and then probably here in the spring of 2021. If I remember correctly, almost won at Phoenix in 2014 or 15, but that was pit road games. But he is on board. I'm probably going to lean more towards this group, though. Hemrick, Smith, Gill, and Hocevar. And this group in the white, I'm not really enthralled by. I do not like the speed of Legacy Motor Club at the moment. Nemechek struggled all throughout Las Vegas. And Eric Jones really struggled for about 3/4 of the race. Somehow found some speed at the end, but it is worrisome. Noah Gragson at 6,600. Very good week last week. Excited about rostering him. And let me double check my notes on that, though. I got a couple notes from the Las Vegas thing. I want to make sure that I don't misstate some of that, if you don't mind. Let me pull that up and take a swig of Gatorade. So Gregson was good last week, had a really good restart. So that finish of 6th, a little bit better than the speed that he really had, but hey, that's what he ended up with. Restarts are part of the game. Going back to Hosever, he was better than 15th place. He had a bad final pit stop. So that number, as we can see over here with a driver rating rank, or he was the 12th highest rated driver, but he only finished 15th because of a bad final pit stop. So again, another reason for my fascination with rostering Hosever. Michael McDowell, his home track, has really improved. Now, here's the thing that I do want to note. If you want to get off of Noah Gragson, and I tweeted this, you see these results here, 2022, 2021, actually I think it's 2021, 2020, and before. McDowell had crew chief Drew Blickensderfer. Drew Blickensderfer is now, he was with Eric Almirola, he is now with Noah Gragson. And this is Blickensderfer's worst track. So if you're worried about the crew chief of Gragson struggling at this track, then again, the new tire could change everything. Michael McDowell has changed crew chief since. It's been pretty good at his home track. Front Row Motorsports has been pretty good over the last season. They're they're considered a top tier Ford team now, not a small team. They are allied strongly with Ford. They're going to have fast cars. We did even see him end up in the optimal lineup here by losing place differential points at 6,700. Now he was 5,800, I believe, in that race. He's slightly almost too expensive, but we still need to consider him based on these results. Same thing with Austin Dillon. He's there competing at the end of each race. You throw in a late race caution, and maybe he bumps into the top 10. And with all these other different value plays, it's very likely that people just aren't going to go to Austin Dillon, despite the fact that RCR had decent speed last week. They just didn't show it because they had different issues. Nonetheless, I think these RCR cars are pretty fast, or fast enough to sneak into the top 10. And I would much rather play Austin Dillon because he's so much cheaper than Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch has so many different issues going on. But I also like it because I don't know if people are going to be completely in love with his results. But I think these are pretty good. He seems to know what he's doing. Ryan Preece has been pretty strong. SHR has been strong at short flat tracks. The new package has worked out for him. You can definitely consider him. Price is not unbearable. Eric Jones, I'm not really all that excited. Like I mentioned before, Legacy Motor Club, yeah, he had a good final run to the race. Now we got to do a different track. I don't know how much speed is in the new Toyota XSE. No for me. Josh Berry. So here's my stance of this team. Rodney Childers early in the week tweeted out that he is looking for a road mechanic. We have mentioned on the show before that the Ford team, over the last 2 years, really, 3 years, as the next gen car came in, as things changed, people jumped ship, people left. People whose job was to make parts, well, they didn't even have that job anymore because all the parts are spec parts. So there's been a lot of turnover at SHR, and the Ford team is not the old Ford team. And we kind of knew that, and we heard Briscoe talking about it last week, and now we know for sure. I mean, when it's race 4 of the season, and you are advertising, hey, we need a road mechanic, that's not a good sign. Let's go a step further. When you have to go to Twitter and beg for a road mechanic, that's not a good sign. When your crew chief has to do it, a Hall of Fame crew chief has to go out and throw out a Twitter blast looking for jobs, look, you should have a stack of resumes on your desk. You should have a line out the door. People should be calling you. At the very least, you should know who to call immediately. Say, hey, come on in. We got a job for you. The fact that we are going to Twitter to get a mechanic for the number 4 team, I ain't paying $7,200 for that. I will consider Suarez at $7,300. I thought that they had decent speed at Trackhouse last week. The results are there. I worry about Alex Bowman. The results aren't terrible, but his price is very cheap. Ultimately, though, my concern is they didn't have any speed last week, and Bowman, without Greg Ives, is just not the same driver. When Greg Ives was the crew chief, he had better cars. He does it now. I can't do it. Bubba Wallace intrigues me, but not enough to have a conversation about him yet. I would love to see what happens in practice. He's slowly shown growth at Phoenix. Could this be the day it clicks? Could this be the package where it clicks? 2311 Toyotas actually did show some speed, and that's a very cheap price. Briscoe's going to be very popular. We know that he has become an awesome driver since they started downshifting at this track. The results tell you everything you need to know. Ty Gibbs had excellent speed last week. He overcame adversity, pit stop, had a penalty, drove back through the field last 100 laps. He may have had the fastest JGR Toyota. I would strongly consider him at $8,000. We've seen him win at this track in the Xfinity Series again. 4th highest rated driver last week. The car has speed. He looks good. 8,000 is a bit of a steal. Keselowski just seems to figure it out. Last week finished 13th, was only the 19th highest rated driver. Won't be surprised if they don't have much speed again, but just through the art of racing, he gets there. Much rather play Chris Buescher at 8,300, who scored the 5th most fantasy points last fall. He's improving to every track. He's improving mainly at the tracks where Brad Keselowski used to have success. This is one of those. Basically, since they're the same price, and Buescher probably carries less brand, would easily go there. I mean, look, 20 hog points. I think he is underpriced. Tyler Reddick's extremely undervalued. You could come up with a narrative that, well, in the races that are championship races and he's not the championship contender, maybe that's why he doesn't really perform well. Maybe that's why other guys just have hot rods because they're the championship 4. But we have seen the spring races. Tyler Reddick has been dynamite. Tyler Reddick had a really fast car last week. Just he needs his pit crew to be better, and he needs to be better about getting into his box. Not buying in on Elliott. Didn't show me enough speed last week. Love Ross Chastain. Good recovery. The 4th place finish is a little bit of an exaggeration because he went with the 2-tire strategy at the end, but he still had a very fast car and overcame adversity. Huge score last year. Finished 1, 2, 3, and 4, 3 of the last 4. I'm on board. Kyle Busch has not shown me elite speed, not at this price. Too many issues. It's been a long time since he's been on the top. I'm not going to go there. Logano, same situation. I'm not buying in yet. I mean, if we're talking about long run speed, it's never really Penske's cup of tea. And if we're looking for a lot of fast laps and laps led at this higher tier, I'm going to want long run speed. That could be Martin Truex Jr., who really hasn't done much at Phoenix in a while, but we know he is a short track wizard. And if this is a long run event with managing tires, Truex is one of the best, and it could play into his strengths, and he could score a boatload of points. And even if, so let's say this tire becomes a real issue, that really does help out JGR, because it seems like the JGR Toyotas simply like high-end speed, top speed. And if this is more of not flat-out speed race and more of a who can have long-run speed, then the JGR Toyotas are alive, at least for this week, at least in the short track package. Bell's just never been able to get it done. We'll consider him. Let's see how he does in practice. But this was a good track for him, and it is a good track type for him in the Xfinity and Cup Series. Just hasn't got done. Hamlin, same story as Truex. The favorites, which I love, Larson, Blaney, Byron. Pick your poison. We'll see in the practice data who will be the guy that we like. Larson did testing here. My voice is shot. Thanks for bearing with me. Please like the video. Please subscribe and share. And go to racefortheprize.com. Pitch in Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Pay for some cough drops. Blessed to have you guys around. Love you. Triple Light's fantastic.